Well, I think it's
Why?
important for the Chinese audience, especially. There was a wonderful article in the New York Times about the school that I was teaching in here in New York in the 1960s and 1970s, the New School for Social Research. I was teaching at the graduate faculty, and the school does not have an endowment, and that's because it was created largely as a left-wing school. It was created by Europeans fleeing oppression from the right wing European governments in the 1910s. Thorstein Veblen taught there, all sorts of left wingers taught there. The modern monetary theorists were associated with there. Stephanie Kelton graduated from there in the 1990s. I taught there, as I said, in the 70s and 80s. But gradually they didn't have enough money to keep going because the cost of living and the cost of doing business and education in New York has gone way up, including the cost of housing. So what they've done is what every university has done to make money. Universities in America are treated as business companies. The difference is that instead of paying dividends, they pay their earnings into their endowment fund. But the new school never had enough students to create an endowment fund. So right now, what there was an article that the new school did have some property. They had a $20 million brownstone, a house. A few blocks away from the school on 12th Street, that they used as a luxurious place for the president of the university to live. And they just sold it for $20 million because the new school runs at a deficit of $40 million a year to hold its classes, including the graduate school classes. And the only way that it can break even is to begin selling property. But the way that it was break even so far is say doing what other universities have done. We have to cut back our what we're paying for professors. And 90% of the teachers at the new school were part timers. They said, we can't afford to hire an economics professor because if we have a full time professor, they're going to have to pay them $100,000 or probably $200,000. One friend of mine was a economics professor at New York University, which is right nearby. He was getting $200,000 a year. He went back to Turkey as it happened. And if you can have the same course in economics being taught by a part timer who gets only $6,000 per course per semester. That means for 12,000 a year, you get part timers to teach what you would otherwise have to pay 100 or $200,000 a year to a full timer. If you look at the chart of employment by universities in the United States, here's the employment of full time professors. Here's the overall employment of of managers, of deans, sub deans, of the professional managerial class, the overhead. And the managers are paid by how much money can you save the university. And the money that you save by moving from full-time professors to part-time professors, you pay yourself. And so the deans get a huge amount. The deans will get maybe $1 million a year. The president of big universities gets 10 million, $15 million a year, even though they don't teach classes. The job of the president of most universities is to meet with alumni and to raise money. The president, will invite wealthy people to parties, will try to attract donors, will be a society figure, have big parties at the presidential house. And whether you're at Harvard or Yale or New York University or even the New School, you will have a house for the president to try to raise money. None of this money raising involves teaching courses. And if you raise money and you increase the amount of money that a school makes by saying, we're going to have a race to the bottom. We're going to hire the cheapest professors we can find. We're going to hire part timers instead of full timers. Then the quality of education, in principle, is going to go down. Well, I know that China and other countries are sending their students to America thinking they're going to get better educated. But instead of being educated by professors who are experienced and have a long background and accumulation of knowledge, they're taught by teaching assistants. They're taught by new graduates who've just got the PhDs. And there are not very many jobs for people graduating with most academic PhDs. If you have a PhD in art history, for instance, maybe you go to work for an auction gallery or an art gallery, but their universities are cutting back their courses in humanities. If you have a course in a PhD in literature or language or history, they're not teaching these courses. They're phasing them out because it's very hard to get funding for this. So basically, you're having the curriculum in the United States being narrowed. It's being taught to lower people. There's something ironic here. I took my PhD from New York University, and I was working full time on Wall Street in the 1960s, and there were part-time teachers who were professionals. These were men in their 50s or 60s who had worked full-time. One of my favorite teachers worked for the National Bureau of Economic Research, a German, Gerhard Bree. Another teacher worked for the United Nations, but he liked to teach as an adjunct professor. Now, as an adjunct professor, he got maybe $3,000 a year, but he liked teaching. So the fact is that the part timers, uh, when I was getting a PhD, were my favorite teachers because they were professionals. They knew what they were doing. They were smart people. They were not new graduates without any experience at all, which are the part timers that we have today. Uh, that's basically what the problem is. And so being a part timer today, it's again a race to the bottom, and the universities are run as if they're a profit making corporation, and there's a steady decay. Well, universities basically have tried to make money by turning themselves into real estate companies. The two largest real estate owners, I think, in New York are Columbia University uptown and New York University. And if a university owns real estate, they don't have to pay a real estate tax on it because it's a nonprofit, tax exempt organization. The theory is that universities really are not profit making corporations. They're providing a public service. They're miseducating the economy to propagandize people so that they believe junk economics and will continue to support the deindustrialization of America, calling that economic progress. So that's a public service to dumb down the population, to make them ignorant is a public service that's very important that universities do. I don't know why China wants to send students to be dumbed down to be taught that socialism is bad and finance is good. But if they study in America, that's what they're taught. Well, at any rate, the universities are given tax exemption on real estate. So when I was only an assistant professor at the new school, and the dean, I said, I'm going to have to go back to work on Wall Street. I can't live on the salary that you're paying. So the dean said, well, we're thinking of merging. And right across the street on Fifth Avenue, there's the Parsons School of Design. We'll give you a contract to study the merger agreement of the universities. And I did that, and they paid me enough to go full time as continue to be a full time professor there. And I realized that, well, when universities merge, it's a real estate project. And indeed, the new school did merge with the Parsons School of Design It merged with the all sorts of other organizations. I think the Manus School. It merged with the Institute of Fine Arts uptown. So all of these mergers came with real estate, and the idea was that maybe the new school could survive by doing what Columbia University and New York University did, and essentially make enough money on real estate so that the real estate rents that they charge uh, will subsidize the payment for this enormous bureaucracy that's making money for the university. Well, unfortunately, if a university acts as a real estate developer, it does what real estate owners do. It tries to get the highest rents available. So the New School and New York universities were both near Greenwich Village, which is sort of a left-wing intellectual center of New York City. And when I came to New York in the early 1960s, there were a lot of bookstores on 8th Street was the big street. So the crosstown bus went on 8th Street, and there were bookstores, remaindered bookstores. There were all sorts of nice intellectual small stores there. Well, what happened was that New York University bought up these stores, and it bought up the artsy left-wing stores on Mulberry on McDougal Street, and the bookstores were turned into shoe stores because they could have higher rents for the shoe stores. There was a whole film about that made, and all of a sudden, 2 years ago, when I walked down 8th Street, the stores were all shuttered up. The landlord, New York University, was so greedy and said, "We're not going to give low priced rents. We're going to hold these rents off the market." You had whole streets just all with boarded up stores, and there was no more basically cultural activity in the real estate around New York University. And you'd think that if a university's purpose was to create a cultural flowering, they would give low priced rents to small family owned bookstores, businesses, art stores, things like that. That's not what universities do to make money. So you have the whole role of the universities in their communities changed. Now, I know when I went to California in the late 1950s, you could already see this. There were two big universities in California. Berkeley was the intellectual university, and UCLA in Los Angeles was the other part of. They were both parts of the University of California, but in Berkeley, all down the big street, Telegraph Avenue, there were many bookstores. There were espresso stores where people would gather. There were places, nice small restaurants and coffee shops for people to gather and talk, and it was a very nice intellectual place. In Los Angeles, around UCLA, what do you have? They're all clothing stores because that's what Los Angeles is all about. It's really part of Hollywood in terms of culture. And I didn't see any bookstores there, not even coffee stores, because everybody had cars to live in the suburbs or in Beverly Hills or wherever they lived, where instead of just walking or bicycling, which is what I did in Berkeley, completely different kind of environment. Well, the whole American university system now looks like UCLA, not like Berkeley. And that's partly because Ronald Reagan essentially wrecked public education in California by turning what was one of the best educational systems in the country, the University of California, into just a essentially profit-making, income-earning venture with a huge bureaucracy of administrators without a proportional growth in the professional training. Well, that's how you've seen education deteriorate into a race to the bottom in the United States, and it's very much like deindustrialization. You can say it's deintellectualization is the sort of academic parallel to deindustrialization. It's a short-termism. It's doing whatever will make the most money instead of trying to say what is the content that the American society needs for an educational system that will best prepare the students and the population to understand how the world works and how they can be creative within this world. That's not what education is about here. And if it's not what it's about, where foreign countries sending their students to the United States or London or similar places where they're not getting this education like they used to do. I mean, 100 years ago, everyone looked forward to the German universities. Everyone looked at universities as center of knowledge, not as ways of making money or going to a real estate company that holds classes in some of its real estate in order to get tax exemption on all the rest of the real estate it owns. There was a lawsuit, a legal case. I think it was back in the 1960s when New York University bought a spaghetti company. Greenwich Village was largely an Italian neighborhood for many years. And so NYU bought a spaghetti store. And it tried to get tax exemption for the spaghetti store because it's actually owned by a university. And finally, the tax authority said, look, a spaghetti store is not turning out educational students. I mean, I'm sure you're turning your students' brains into spaghetti. We're going to have to treat your spaghetti store as a profit-making entity, not as a tax-exempt entity. So, of course, NYU closed it down and turned it into, I guess, some kind of student housing or rental property. The decay of education in the United States is part of the deindustrialization process and the financialization and the fire sector taking over education just as it's taken over industry. When I went to Australia the first time, I was introduced to the best economics professor there, Steve Keen. And Steve Keen, like me, analyzed the dynamics of debt. And he said the economy is financializing. There's no way that the debts that Australia and other countries are running up can be paid. And so the university said, well, we've got to fire this guy. This is upsetting people because we're all about debt. And the banks are really running Australia. But University of Western Sydney, they said, we can't fire him. There's academic freedom. So what they did was close down the whole economics department. So they said, oh, no, we're not firing Steve Keen. We're just deciding not to teach economics anymore. Well, Steve Keen sued them, went to court, and made $1 million Australian dollars as a compensation for being wrongfully fired. And he used that to leave Australia. But unfortunately, he made the bad decision to go to London to teach at a London university out near Heathrow Airport. He found that they were doing the same kind of thing that American and Australian universities are doing. In addition to his teaching economics, they wanted him to do all sorts of clerical duties, like file taxi cab reports and add up expenses for things. And they wanted to save money by making the professors act as accountants, or since you're an economist, you must know how to do this. So Steve left and lived happily ever after outside of the English-speaking countries. He just finished a long tour in Hungary of finishing a new book on what's wrong with neoclassical economics, a sequel to the last book he did. So he has a new book out coming out in the next month that he just finished writing in Hungary. And I think he's gone back to Holland right now that he likes. So here you have, there's an illusion in Asia that because America had wonderful universities in the 19th century, late 19th century, and early 20th century, they still have them. But a university today is not what it used to be, alas.
就是我们必须将战争放在资本流转的一个大的背景下来思考。
当西方的资本可以通过新殖民主义的全球化，进一步推进它的产业资本扩张和金融资本扩张的时候，这个时候你们大家看到的都是各种各样的非常美好的说法，推进你们的改革，推进你们的开放，帮助你们的人民得到更好的福利等等。我们也都知道，世界上各个主要经济体都不是被外部问题造成的严重困境，而很大程度上都是内部问题造成的。
任何一个国家都应该尊重诚实劳动，不应该尊重攫取。
只有在一线政策部门，
对，
你是知道经济社会发展过程中间真实问题出在哪儿了，
有一个宏观的视野，能看到天下。